I mean, I'm not saying it'll work.
Right.
But there is that.
Well,
effort.
it was brought up,
CSAC, I think, is part of it.
yeah.
Because you don't want to go back and look
CRC.
at.
Do you? I mean, I have one somewhere. I just
Angela.
haven't found it yet.
Okay, welcome to the Mendocino Local Agency Formation Commission of October 2nd. Our first order of business is roll call, please.
Commissioner Hart,
Here.
am I on? Am I on? Am I on now? Okay.
Testing.
Commissioner Orth,
Here.
Commissioner Hamburg,
Here,
Commissioner Ward,
Here.
Commissioner Brown,
Here.
Commissioner Gonzalez,
here,
Commissioner Doble,
Present.
Commissioner McNerlin, Present. Commissioner McCowan, Commissioner Ignacio, Commissioner Rosenberg.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Public expression, I don't see anybody in the audience, so we'll move on to other business. Consent calendar. The only one that was unusual is the approval of the resolution correcting the final map for North 10 Mile Annexation. Does anyone want to pull that, or just is it good where it is? John?
I don't wish to pull it, but it does underscore a couple of issues that will be part of our discussion when we get to the tax annexation negotiation policy. Again, I don't see any reason to hold this up, but there's a couple of things involved that we might ask, what have we done in the past, or have we?
Okay. Anybody else? We'll just keep it in consent. I don't have any issues with the claims or summary of the minutes, so. Anybody else have any issues or discussions?
I'll move approval of the consent calendar.
I'll second.
Good. Any further discussion? Not, do a roll call, please.
I'm sorry, who was the second? Was that you, Jerry? Okay, thank you. Commissioner Orth,
Yes.
Commissioner Hamburg,
Yes.
Commissioner Brown,
Yes.
Commissioner Gonzalez,
Yes.
Commissioner Doble,
Yes.
Commissioner McNerlin. Aye. Commissioner Ward.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
There are no public hearing items for number 5. We'll go into number 6, public workshop for Elk Community Service District draft SOI update. We'll start with Uma on this.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to bring up first that we have made some revisions to the agenda format, and we welcome any comments on those. These were based on Commissioner Brown's suggestions at the last meeting. We're bringing forward the sphere of influence update for the Elk Community Services District. The municipal service review was adopted in 2016. So we're now bringing forward the SOI update. The existing SOI is has a coterminous boundary with the sphere. One of the recommendations in the municipal service review was to improve the website. I wanted to point out that the district has initiated and has up and running a comprehensive website that is dedicated to the district. And there is a map on page 35 of your agenda packet that identifies 2 areas that the district has identified as being served by the district and requests their inclusion in the sphere of influence update. I wanted to thank Mr. McMillan for all of his assistance. He is the board president, and also Chief Mitchell. One of the things that came up when we were discussing the sphere update was that, as we've heard all along, had to do with the financial reporting requirements and their difficulty in meeting those standards. They've been discussing it with the auditor's office, best ways that they can move forward, and if there's any ways to streamline that. So we had some discussions about that. The financial information that is in the Sphere of Influence document, it was taken from the state auditor's website, or the state controller's website, excuse me. So that is the most up-to-date information we could pull off of the website. They haven't had an audit done in a couple of years because of their audit cycle. I don't think I have anything else to present, but I would be happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions from the commission? I have someone on the financial summary. Fixed assets they have listed as an expense, is that actually depreciation, or is, because if they're actually buying fixed assets, it wouldn't be an expense, it'd be an asset. It looks pretty significant too. In the 13-14, they got $131,000. I don't think that would be considered an expense if it's actual assets.
Okay, I will check on that.
All right, anything else, John?
Well, kind of following up on your comment, and I believe this may have come forward for approval, the MSR, prior to the commission requesting that future financial accounting show total assets and any reserve funds that might be held by the different entities that we're reviewing, because just showing the current budget information is a pretty incomplete picture. And so I think we did give that direction, but it was probably after approval of this MSR that this is kind of based off of or patterned off of.
Right.
One question that I did have, well, I've got a couple, including the previous MSR determinations and then having the update, there's a lot of duplication in here. And so, I should have gone back and looked, but the summary of MSR determinations, was that a document newly created for the SOI, or is that part of the MSR?
That is verbatim out of the 2016 MSR, and the reason we did it afterwards was so that the commission could see the adopted determinations from that document.
And it's just formatted a little bit differently, but all the same info.
Correct, it's just summarized there, yeah.
But then the updated info, I think it'd be maybe less work for you and easier for us to see the actual changes if it just highlighted the actual changes, because there does seem to be a lot of repetition. So that's
Sure.
a suggestion for the future. And SOI recommendation 1.2.6 at the top of page 1.8. I think the wording there needs to be revised, because we're not really affirming an SOI that is coterminous. We're actually recommending a bit of a change. And, if you read the whole thing, you understand what's being recommended, but it could be stated more succinctly, I think.
Okay.
Oh, Carol.
Just to mention the obvious, we have a fire district here that's serving a large area that has insufficient equipment, financially doesn't look in very good shape, and has insufficient volunteers. I think someplace in our report, we should mention the fact that these people are performing a very needed service if they weren't doing it, but they're doing it in a way that is very marginal.
Tony and Dan.
Thank you for those comments, and, several of these determinations, 5, 6, small fire district issues. Ben, their chair, is basically been our fire association's chief go-to guy and very active with the fire association because of Elk's situation. Votes on the Board of Supervisors that impinge upon these issues, of course, the 172 funding, which we appreciate, but also things like the housing issues on the coast, which have been a major issue with volunteer fire departments, and the impact of your votes on anything to bring about maybe some kind of voucher system for those who rent their a room or a property to a volunteer. If there was a voucher program where there was some sort of relief, say on the bed tax, or, we have to come up with some solutions here. It's really starting to impinge upon young people in particular, who generally are going to be the volunteer force for these districts, and it's affecting right now the coastal areas more than the inland, but it's an issue in both general areas throughout Mendocino County. The old equipment issue, that's really the need for capital funding, and again, whether we go to some new countywide fire department or look at Service Area 3 as a formal district for emergency services so that we can get a tax base that comes into the county that then can provide for capital costs for purchasing equipment in particular. These issues are really important, and moving forward for this commission, we should be very aware that those are, the fire districts, many of the smaller ones in particular, are really suffering out there in Mendocino County. And this process that we go through and review really helps to highlight that. And so again, thank you for your comment.
Okay, Dan?
Yeah, just following up on both Carol's comments and Tony's comments, they're certainly well taken. As I was looking through the MSR determinations, there's, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of the determinations have to do with these inadequacies that both of the commissioners addressed. And I've spent quite a bit of time over the last couple of years, as has Supervisor Jurdy, talking with the leadership of the Elk Volunteer Fire District. Basically, they need some funding. One of the things they need funding for is to make it more possible for the younger people who do live within the district and could serve as volunteers to get some of the training that they need, because it's just we all know this. It's just become more and more complex, and we were able to take some of the 172 money. I think it's $9,300. Is that what it is? But it's not a lot of money. The attempts of some of these smaller districts that are strapped, like Albion Little River, to raise money through an assessment ran into legal issues, which are currently being fought out. I think specifically they wanted to levy an assessment on timber companies that are operating within their jurisdiction, and there was a legal challenge to that, which has not yet been resolved. But even that, I think, for Albion Little River amounted to about $24,000 per year. So the needs are much greater than the amount of money that's available. There are a few of these smaller districts, as Tony well knows, that are doing okay. Mendocino is doing fairly well.
Potter Valley.
Comanche seems to hold their own. Potter Valley. Mendocino does pretty well. They have a really strong tax base. Hopland is really in trouble. Elk is really in trouble. And Albion Little River is really in trouble, just to name three. And I'm just thinking of the 5th District, and the volunteer fire departments are really struggling. At one point, there has been talk, and I know this is has been discussed at the Association of Fire Districts, to try putting a tax for unincorporated areas on the ballot. I think they've been kind of scared off by other measures that were on the ballot and feeling they didn't want to be on with competing sales tax measures such as the mental health initiative. But there is interest in that group. In a couple of years ago, they actually, or not even a couple of years ago, about a year ago, they came up with language for an initiative that looked, it looked pretty possible that it might attract the 2/3 it would need. But anyway.
What about consolidation with some of the stronger districts in the area?
Yeah, I think anything might be possible, including consolidation, but you know how spread out these districts are.
That's a big district, Alcaz.
Yeah, and how spread out we are as a county. So it's I don't know. We really haven't solved the problem.
Carrie?
But it also is a problem, but, there's several sides to the problem. It's responding on all the state highways. Highway 1, Highway 20, both Highway 20s, and Highway 101 really keeps these volunteer departments busy.
And answer is, the association is really pushing, I think, beginning to push for the transient bed tax in the county to be raised to the same level as the cities, in particular to pay dispatch costs, which would alleviate the pull on 172 funds, which would free them up for distribution to the fire districts. So that's really what we think the Board of Supervisors could do in most immediate fashion next year. Not this year, clearly, but next year we think that would be it would, again, just like the sales tax not being equal to the cities, it's just a matter of equalizing the charges countywide, and we think the nexus exists with the transient bed tax because of the highways, the transients that call on the fire districts for service, whether it's a cliff rescue for someone visiting a beach or an accident on one of these U.S. highways or state highways.
Carol?
I also, I'm concerned about, I don't live in that area. I don't live in that area, but however, one would think that the folks that do, and their fire insurance, those kinds of things are affected by how what possible services are available to them. Yeah. And it seems to me that there might be, a special fee for people who live in areas such as this in order to help support their fire district. I don't know what the processes are, but it seems to me that you would want to put money into your fire district. It would at least affect, what your insurance costs would be. But these people are extremely vulnerable, and if the truck is on the highway taking care of an emergency and there's a fire in the district, you can't be in two places at one time. It just strikes me as a very unsafe situation.
It seems that all these comments are financial. In discussing this with the chief, did he have any other ideas of how they could become more
He didn't have any ideas that they're not already pursuing or have been discussed here. I did ask him about the question that came up at the last meeting for CompG, I believe, that had to do with fundraising. And that is something that happens through the volunteer fire department. As a CSD, they're not allowed to do that, so that's why those numbers were not reflected in the document here. But that is another avenue that they pursue through the volunteer fire department. Other than that, they're struggling with it.
Well, hopefully some of the comments that the commissioners made here today, maybe you could go back to him and give him some food for thought. Tony, you had a lot of good ideas. Maybe you could talk to him.
I will say that the Mendocino College, by taking over the Coastal College, CAL FIRE and the fire districts are working with the college to give the training courses at the coastal location to help out the coastal fire districts.
Good.
Great.
Carrie, do you have a comment?
I was just going to say it's a statewide issue.
Yeah, it is.
It's not just Mendocino County.
Maybe we'll get some ideas at Cal AFCO. End of the month. All right, any more comments on this? Do we need a motion on this to move forward, Uma?
Yeah, got it.
We're good, no motions, just move forward.
No, this is a public workshop, so we'll move forward with making the changes as that we talked about today, and do some follow-up, and then as we get a group, we'll schedule them for public hearing.
If you're gonna do follow-up, I would like the comment that John made, and I was alluding to, is it was what kind of funds do they have in reserves? That kind of thing. A balance sheet would be nice, you know,
Okay.
that kind of things too. John, do you want to add anything to that?
Well, I mean, the SOI basically is supposed to have info from the NSI.
Yeah, true.
When we set a new policy going forward, or we request inclusion of new material, do we really want to put it on staff to essentially update all of that past work, or just be mindful of it going forward? And would it change our recommendation in this instance anyway?
Yeah, okay.
I thought I should do one more piece of good news for the fire district. The Brook Trails district did just order a water tender. We're using the Prop 172 funds, which is about 20 grand that we get, to do a lease, a 10-year lease purchase of that vehicle. It's about a $350,000 vehicle, just to show you a typical cost of a current engine. This is a water tender that's in much need throughout the county. For regional responses, and they tend to pay for themselves because they are available to go outside the district and provide service to other districts, and they thereby, after a certain amount of hours, get paid by the state for those mutual aid, and they pay for themselves over the lifetime of the vehicle.
Okay.
Yeah. And comment about equipment, I know Potter Valley watches all the time for state surplus. CAL FIRE, et cetera, equipment being changed out. And if you're really quick and have that cash available that you've been saving for, something like this, you know, it happens. You can upgrade your equipment that way. And I know Potter Valley's been very successful in doing so. And even when I think of the ambulance in Laytonville, it's been a very, very long time, but it was gifted, but they had to drive all the way to Florida to get it. So Jim Little and his wife flew out to Florida and drove the ambulance back across the United States to take it to Laytonville, and that's how they got their first ambulance. But
Did he use it on the way back and generate some revenue? Okay, we'll move on to item 7, matters for discussion and possible action. 7A, annual legislative platform development for 2017. This was a draft policy from the Policy and Procedure Committee. Again, thank you. Uma, you want to open this one up?
Sure. So at the August 7th meeting, the Commission adopted this legislative policy that's in the staff report. The first item on that was to consider adoption of an annual legislative platform. So the Policies and Procedures Committee looked at that for this meeting. Commissioner McNerlin reviewed the Cal LAFCO 2017 legislative platform and made edits to make it relevant to Mendocino LAFCO. And that is in your staff report and attached to the draft resolution. We do have a correction to the draft resolution. I think this is one that we missed the changing the title on it. So we have a correct copy for signature should that be adopted, but I just wanted to note that.
Okay, we'll bring it back to the commission. Does anybody have some comments with regard to it? It's well written.
I
Good job.
do have a comment. So we have two different ones, and I see a strikeout on this draft, and I'm talking about item 3.5. The continuance of Williamson Act, though this county was not like other counties, a couple others, that absolutely canceled all their Williamson Act contracts because of the program funding through the state subvention payments, and that is still an issue. And to me, that should remain, because counties cannot support it. What happened in this county, there was legislation that went through that instead of doing 10-year contracts, they did 9-year contracts, which raised the level of funds paid on property tax by those in Williamson Act to make up for the subvention funding. And the state still has not provided that funding since they canceled it back a few years ago. So to me, the two of them are tied together.
The restoration of public funding, the strikeout?
Yes.
Okay. I had a couple of misspelled words in 3.4.
Yeah, I had that too.
3.4 policies, and then 4.2
Two.
support of
Yeah.
LAFCO.
Right.
Now, I may have missed it. I've tried to read through most of it, but I think this commission over the years has supported consolidations as well, and I don't think that was mentioned in the platform. John?
I have to say, a lot of this language is incredibly vague, and I couldn't begin to tell you what some of it means. And, you know, this is, if I understand, it's based on the state LAFCO legislative platform, and then it's been modified somewhat, but, again, there's just so many things in here that you could read anything into it you wanted to. So I really don't know the value, but it'll be up to the commission. And I think it would be helpful also to see a red line of the state platform, and then show a red line that would show what changes were made, so we kind of have that as a baseline. And then there are a number of typos as well, and some, sentence structure.
Teresa?
So the red lines are shown. That's how few there are.
Those are the only changes.
Like 4.5, 3.5, that was it. We just went through and changed it grammatically to pertain to us. So we followed the state platform exactly to the letter. We didn't think there was a need to deviate from that as a committee. Also, it's vague because when we support some sort of legislation, it should come to our board and we should vote on it as an independent piece of legislation. So I don't think we should be too detailed so that we have a say-so as a board on what we support. So this is just an overall, a broad look at a legislative platform, not something detailed. That would have to be issue by issue that came before the board. As far as consolidation, that wasn't in the state, so that's why we didn't put it here. If this board would like to make that one of our legislative policies, then this is just a beginning document for you that we wanted to bring to you as a starting point for our legislative platform.
Yeah, and we're going to review this every year, I assume, too.
As often as you would like, Mr. Chairman.
Well, you stated, and I think the agenda summary, that after the state puts out their platform, we'll review it at the same time.
Yeah.
Well, I believe consolidation is pretty important. We've already talked about it a little bit today with some districts. I know we've talked about water districts consolidating, so I think it's important. I'm not sure exactly where it would go in the platform, but it's something that this commission, I know, has looked at in the past. We don't have the ability to force consolidation, but we encourage it. Johnny?
I think the proper place would be we could add a 5.6.
5.6.
Just,
Oh,
and just
Just add it.
Yeah, just add that this body supports consolidation whenever prudent and
okay.
How about
Attorney.
support collaborative efforts among agencies encouraging consolidation in an effort to,
Provide efficiencies.
provide efficiencies, improve service at a lower cost,
Yes. That sounds good.
something like that.
Would that be added to 5.5?
Good, yeah.
5.5 seems to be their attempt at, without using the word consolidation, to say
Well,
the
we
same
can
thing.
use the
Yeah.
word
Yeah.
and just add to that.
How about support collaborative efforts among agencies, support collaborative efforts, comma, including consolidation, comma.
Yeah, that works.
Good for
Yeah.
me.
That works.
Yeah.
Okay,
Any
got
more?
that? Okay.
Chair?
Yes.
I just wanted to say that this is going to be an annual process when they come out with their annual sheet like this, that we will do a quick review and then adopt our version, just like this process here. So, and again, it allows the other policy for staff to respond to legislative matters prior to a commission meeting and then for us to ratify. So it is a process, and I think it's a good tool for us to use for that purpose.
Good. Don, did you have any specific misspelled words?
Well, my favorite is in the last paragraph, the second sentence, to promote environmental justice for undeserved inhabited communities. I think they meant underserved.
It's funny how one letter can change something so much.
But that's just typical of how poorly written this whole thing is, and it's so incredibly vague. You know, authority of LAFCO, primary issues. LAFCO's, and so we want to support legislation that maintains or enhances LAFCO's ability to make decisions regarding boundaries and formations, as well as to enact recommendations related to the delivery of services. Does LAFCO have that authority? So, you know, it's kind of, that's rife throughout this whole thing, but I'll leave it at that. You know, the commission wants to adopt it. I don't think it's going to tip the LAFCO balance of power at the state level or in the legislature.
I agree with that. So, any more comments? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Are we going to add in the restoration of program funding through state subvention programs? Are we going to add that back in?
I think it's important.
Is that okay?
That's fine.
Williamson Act.
Yeah, the Williamson Act. Yeah, that's
All
fine.
right.
I think Carrie has a comment.
Yes, good.
I would also like to see perhaps a clean copy come back before adoption of this, and also we will have representatives at the Cal LAFCO. Maybe we'll have more information that we can add to it. So my suggestion is tabling it for this meeting, have a clean draft that comes back for the next meeting, and there might be input from our representatives at that are going to Cal LAFCO.
Kevin.
Thank you. I was going to actually make the same suggestion that for me personally, I would like to go and maybe network a little bit and talk at the Cal LAFCO conference. Try to get some more information about how these really make their way and what the significance is to our agency. And I don't see why we couldn't wait another month to make a final adoption after.
And I
maybe
would
some feedback.
suggest that one of the best people, and I'm sure he's going to be there, is John Leopold. He's a supervisor from Santa Cruz County, and I think he's been president of Cal LAFCO, but I think he chairs the legislative committee for Cal LAFCO, but he would be a great one to connect with.
Yeah. Tony?
Since we spoke about consolidation and the importance of Mendocino County, I will say state agencies seem to be pressuring, I know Willits and Brook Trails, for example, to do an intertie. They're not allowing Brook Trails to have additional connections at this time. They're still holding us back since the drought declaration. I think it's in part because behind the scenes they're kind of pressuring us to start talks with Willits about an intertie or something of that nature.
Okay, we have two commissioners that want to table this to next month and get a clean copy. Is there
That's
anyone that disagree with that? Okay, we'll table it for next month. All right, let's move on to item 7B, Annexation Tax Negotiation Procedures Update. This again was provided for by the Policy and Procedures Committee.
So the Policies and Procedures Committee discussed this at both the July 31st and September 14th meetings that we held. In between the meetings, I did have the opportunity to meet with county executive office staff and discussed the process with them, both the LAFCO process and what the revenue and tax code requirements were. I think that it helped open the lines of communication a little bit there, and also provided understanding on both sides of the different agency processes. So what's being brought forward is revisions to the current policy for application materials. They are on page 50 of your agenda packet. Towards the top, though, there's an underlined version that shows the changes, proposed changes, and then the clean version below under recommended action. Also included with this item, we've prepared 2 form letters that will be sent out once an application is received, and that's in your packet as well on pages 51 and 52. One would go to the county assessor and the auditor controller's office to start the process, and the other one would go to the CEO's office as an informational piece, that this is that we have an application on file and that this process is starting. It's intended that a copy would also go to the district supervisor, where the annexation or reorganization is taking place as an FYI.
Very good. Any comments? John?
First of all, I think it's appropriate we have a policy, and I appreciate the work that's been done towards that. I think it could use a little fine-tuning, and that provoked a cry of disbelief. But,
No, just a giggle.
and I want to point out, with regard to Fort Bragg, and we have the previous resolution before us that was adopted May 6, 2013, and 6A on page 13 of our packet. It includes the statement, upon completion of the annexation, no property taxes will be transferred to the Fort Bragg Rural Fire Protection Agency. So that covers the requirements of the state code section, but I'm willing to say that no negotiation as such ever took place, and the Board of Supervisors as a body was never made aware of this. And I wonder, maybe I'm mistaken, maybe we have resolutions on file that would support the statement here, but it may be that we don't. If we adopted a resolution at the Board of Supervisors level, I'm completely blanking it out.
I did research that file to see if we could find anything that was done for that particular application, and both of those resolutions from both the county and the district should have been submitted to LAFCO as part of the application, and there was nothing in the files to that effect.
And I think that's because the resolutions were never adopted by the affected agencies. So, and a few minor word changes. The proposed new policy, the third line from the bottom where it says applications requiring the process, I would just spell it out, and instead of the process, I would say a tax exchange agreement, which is redundant because we kind of say that in the opening of that sentence. But and then instead of saying in the last line of the underlined section there, whose district the change of organization is occurring, say instead is proposed. And instead of simply sending the application to the county CEO, auditor, assessor, and the supervisor whose district may be affected, and we are going to have situations where multiple supervisorial districts are affected, I would instead suggest that it go to each agency that is affected, because that isn't currently provided for here, and to the Board of Supervisors. So it'd be the CEO, each agency that would be affected, and the full Board of Supervisors, I think would be appropriate. Again, bearing in mind, you're often going to have multiple districts, or multiple supervisorial districts affected by a proposed change and reorganization. So I think it'd be more inclusive to expand that list. Then I've got a couple of comments on the letter as well.
Carrie?
The CEO will get it if it goes to the Board of Supervisors.
So, yeah,
And it
so-
should
so
be the
that's
other
fine.
way around as well.
Well, the other
If
way
it-
around, we don't always get it.
That's true, but I'm saying, the CEO will always get it if it's Board of
True.
Supervisors.
So therefore, you don't need to include the CEO. It would be each affected agency and the Board of Supervisors, the assessor, the auditor.
It'll work? Yeah, this meeting took place between UMA and the CEO to come up with this. So I would say cutting the CEO out of the loop on the correspondence would not be a good road to take on
Well,
this.
Well, it's fine, it's only one more
I
person
mean,
for someone
that's
to contact.
That's the contact, that is our contact, that's the contact for this. She's the one who initiates the procedure for everything to go forward. So I don't think we
Does
should.
it say that in state law?
No, this is a policy, this is a local policy. So when there's a tax negotiation between an agency and the county CEO has requested that she receive a letter.
Well, she's going to be notified. Carrie makes the point. She'll be notified if the Board of Supervisors is notified. What didn't happen in 2013, no one notified the Board of Supervisors, and the process didn't occur.
So we can just put both of them in there? Would that solve it? They both Board of Supervisors and the CEO get a copy? It's one more piece of paper. Kevin?
No, I would just say that I would agree with that because there's no obligation for the CEO to notify the Board of Supervisors of any of this unless that person wants to. And if it goes to the Board of Supervisors, then everyone's notified. And then the board can direct action to be taken to work through the process.
Okay.
Can I ask
Yeah.
a clarifying question? Is it best to send it to the supervisor, the district supervisor, or the clerk of the board then?
Carrie?
Actually, Board of Supervisors, because then everybody gets a copy.
Okay.
If it's sent to a single supervisor, it's whether that supervisor shares it or not, as a part of their processes. And I would rather say the full Board of Supervisors, because it's the clerk that processes that mail, and the clerk of the board presently is the CEO. So, and then we have the deputies that actually do that work. But going to the Board of Supervisors, it means every supervisor is notified, and the point was made about a special district having multiple supervisors involved. But going to the full board, then everybody knows.
Good. I just think this should have happened 20 years ago. I mean, this policy. We would have had a lot less issues, especially with Anderson Valley last month or month before.
And I just want to say that, as a county supervisor, let's say it gets in my letter pile, and then it gets, put in the wrong pile for recycling or responding, it might not get to everyone else. And so there's a clear process. And I think my colleagues here will agree with me. It's best because, a lot of times I'll get something that one of my colleagues has had copied off to make sure the full board sees it. And I really appreciate it because then it's something I can share.
Sure.
And maybe it's happening in my district as well. But I think going to the full board, all the resolutions we're receiving now for the general election goes to the full Board of Supervisors in changing, when their board of directors or commissioners would be elected. I just think it's all important. We all get the letters and copies of them, so.
Good. So is this clarified now?
It does. I have one other question. Commissioner McCowan mentioned that we should possibly send it to each of the agencies affected. We often don't, do you mean if it's, for example, if it's a fire district, then send it to neighboring fire districts, or the tax exchange process, those districts that might be affected?
Well, anyone whose territory would be affected, I would think.
Okay,
So if one jurisdiction is proposing to annex territory of another jurisdiction, seems like they ought to be notified formally, whether or not they have a role in the tax negotiation.
When we receive an application, we do send out a notice of filing that goes to all affected agencies. There is a separate list that is generated as part of the tax share agreement process that is done by the auditor and the assessor's office. It's a different, because the tax share can come from other non-related agencies within that area.
The proposed change refers to until proof of a property tax exchange agreement in the form of adopted resolutions is provided by the local agencies whose service area or service responsibility will be altered. So if you're annexing someone else's territory, that's going to affect either their service area or responsibility. It just seems like it would make more sense to provide for broader notification to anyone potentially affected.
Yeah, yes, I completely agree. We do have a notice of filing that is not included in this packet that would go out to all of those agencies. This one is specific to the tax share agreement process.
Well, but again,
Okay.
the reference here is to anyone whose service area or responsibility would be affected.
Okay,
So
two
it
more
just
pieces,
seems
two more
consistent.
pieces of paper we'll send out.
Okay.
Carol?
And then on the letter.
Wait, Carol. Go ahead, John.
What I like is a little clarification about in this process. Obviously, we need to notify a whole lot of people, but where does the authority to make the change actually happen?
Ultimately, it's LAFCO. But there has to be that property tax agreement.
And who has the authority to make property tax agreements?
The agencies involved.
Only the agencies in LAFCO, so
No,
No.
the agencies
Not
affected,
LAFCO.
I believe.
My main question is, what if they don't come to an agreement? And that has happened many times in the past.
It's always happening.
So does the process not go forward?
No, it actually, well, it's just like what happened with Anderson Valley. If there's not an agreement, then we just need a piece of paper from the county saying there's not an agreement. And then Anderson Valley or the other agency decides what they want to do from that point on. But we just need to document that either way, whether yay or nay.
So they can decide, well, we're not gonna get any tax revenue, so we'll just drop the whole thing, or we'll
Yeah.
just absorb the lack
Right.
of revenue and continue with the annexation.
Yes, exactly.
Tony?
Yeah, we discussed maybe having a quick another piece of paper that allowed a quick out saying that no tax revenue will be exchanged. And so that it stops, it confirms the process took place and found that no revenue exchange would occur and would be a quick out from this process, which didn't occur in Anderson Valley, for example. So I think maybe we should still come up with one more piece of paper that's provided to the CEO's office that allows, or to the affected agencies to check off no tax exchange required. Something simple that gives us a piece of paper that shows the consideration was made and, a finding was made that there will be no tax exchange.
John?
Well, if state law requires a resolution, you can say that in a resolution. It's very simply. I mean, the problem in Anderson Valley wasn't so much lack of willingness or lack of a negotiation. If the county had given them all the revenue involved, they didn't feel that was sufficient to encourage them to expand their boundaries.
Mr. Chairman, yeah, I just want to say though, with respect to Anderson Valley, that it took a really long time to figure that out. And I think that's what's moved us to try to come up with some more clarity here.
Right. And I
Certainly agree with that.
And I appreciate the P&P committee coming up with this. Like I said, where was it, 10 years ago? Anyway, any more comments?
Just one, thank you. I think it is important to me, the nexus here is that there's some sort of information in the record that says they started discussions, because it wasn't clear to me with Anderson Valley that there was really discussions. There was a perception by one party that there were discussions, and there's a perception by the other party that they were really not negotiating anything. And so we want to make sure that at least they engage.
This will definitely help it out.
Yeah.
John?
Kind of to that point, with regard to the letter to the assessor, auditor, controller, I do not believe it's technically true to say the affected local agencies cannot commence the negotiation process and develop a property tax exchange agreement until information is provided as follows. I think it would be accurate to say they cannot complete the negotiation process, because there have actually been ongoing negotiations that have lasted for decades.
Yes, they have.
And I believe without the exchange of this
That was my point
information.
earlier.
So you can have the negotiation, you can commence it, you just can't complete it.
Right.
Until you get all this info nailed down. So just a word change to cannot complete. And then based on the discussion about the policy, there might be some wording changes related to that. And in the last sentence, I think instead of saying until we receive, because LAFCO shouldn't be spoken of as we, it should be spoken of as LAFCO, I would delete we receive, and then later in the sentence, say, so it would read, a public hearing until proof of a property tax exchange agreement in the form of adopted resolutions is received from the affected local agencies. And then where the next sentence begins, we appreciate, it would say LAFCO appreciates. And then in the next to the last line again, insert complete instead of commence.
All right, Carrie.
I just
sorry,
have
my mother
I
was
just
an
have a
English
question.
teacher.
You ought to review books for the New York.
Did staff
Exchange
take
Committee.
into account all the suggested changes that we have here? I'm so confused at this point that I need to see a completion of something.
Can we
And-
send this to John before we get it?
We,
Well, how did
I
you
can
not
read
go
that
send
last
it to John?
paragraph. I mean, it's basically going to read, LAFCO cannot deem this application complete. You kept that complete there, correct?
Yes.
The first complete.
Yeah.
And
Correct.
move forward with scheduling a public hearing
Until proof.
until proof of a property tax exchange agreement in the form of adopted resolution is received from the affected local agencies. LAFCO appreciates your efforts to provide the necessary information in a timely manner in order to allocate local agencies. Complete the negotiation process. Please do not hesitate. No other changes.
Contact us. Or, well, it could be me, because it's signed by a person.
So that's, there,
Yeah.
it's on the
That's
tape
it.
now.
And then commensurate changes to the next letter as well, I think.
So are we okay with adopting it today, or do we want to see a fresh copy next meeting?
I would prefer a fresh copy coming back.
I'm kind of confused at this point, so.
Okay.
Is that all right, Tony?
Yeah, that's fine.
And would you all feel comfortable just putting it on consent for the next meeting? Or?
Yeah, that'd be fine.
Consent, thank you.
As long as I know
That's a good
John's
way to
read
do
it
it.
one more time.
That's a good one.
Or gets his comments in prior.
Thank you, John, though. Those are good comments. Thank you. Okay, so that one's going to be moved on to next meeting. So we'll move on to 7C, Budget and Adjustment Policy.
This is on page 55 of the agenda packet. During some of the past meetings we've had where budget amendments have come up, certainly like how best to go about doing budget amendments has been discussed. So the Policies and Procedures Committee discussed the process and is recommending a policy intended to specify some flexibility for overages on single line items. The policy they're putting forward is to allow exceedance of specific line items not to exceed 5% or a maximum of 3,000. So the budget adjustment recommended policy is on page 55. This policy has been reviewed and approved by legal counsel as well. So this, if you have any questions, please let us know.
Okay, no questions, John. Very good.
He might have missed it in his studying the other day.
I appreciate it, John. But the policy, you guys have been really busy, and I appreciate that. This is 3 good policies that you put together, and thanks again. So, can we do a motion on this one? Or any comments?
I move approval.
I'll second.
No in the comments? Okay, we'll do, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Um,
It is a resolution.
It's a resolution.
It's better be
Yeah, it is a
roll call.
resolution. Sorry, it is a resolution. Do a roll call then.
Commissioner McNerlin,
Aye.
Commissioner Doble,
Yes.
Commissioner Gonzalez,
Yes.
Commissioner Brown,
Yes.
Commissioner Hamburg,
Yes.
Commissioner Orth,
Yes.
Commissioner Ward.
Yes. Now, I know that's 3, Paul. We haven't adopted the other 2, but maybe in the near future, we've got some other policies. I'd like to see an updated policy and procedure. Are you trying? Okay.
We have gone through and done a draft version of the policies and procedures update to the guide, and we'll be bringing that to the Policies and Procedures Committee. And then once we get these wrapped in, then I think we can bring it to the commission after that.
Okay.
Or maybe before it even goes to PMP, send it out to the board here, and we can bring their comments into our committee.
That'd be a good idea.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to item 8A, work plan, current and future proposals.
Okay, there's no change to the first one, which is the City of Ukiah detachment of Ukiah Valley Sanitation District service areas. The second one is a pre-application request from the Millview County Water District for an annexation of approximately 388 acres along North State Street. We have been processing that, and we have, staff has provided a letter to SHN engineers and the Water District, so we are working through that with them. There's no changes to the future projects list, except to note that the Nichols annexation that was included on there was also included in that Millview County Water District pre-application. We did have a request for information about annexing some industrial property into the city of Willits. I provided information to that person, and I haven't heard back from them since, so I'm not sure the status of that. Those developers had contacted the city of Willits, so I was in some discussion with the city planner there about that. The MSR and SOI updates. I apologize for the city of Fort Bragg not being here today to do their public hearing. We had a little miscommunication about the public noticing when that had to be into the Fort Bragg Advocate. So that has been published, and we are scheduled to hear that for public hearing on the November 6th meeting. We have a draft of the Brook Trail CSD, MSR, and SOI update that we are working through with staff from the district. We've sent in a request for information to fill in the gaps, and that's anticipated in mid-October. And then we have also started the Mutual Water Company's informational update. It's really a collection of information. They are not required to we are not required to do a municipal service review on them, and they're not required to provide all information. Our intent is to do a profile for each mutual water company. So that has been initiated, and I'm not sure when we'll be able to bring that through. It actually takes quite a bit of time to both identify and contact the mutual water companies. So we are working on that. I have, I guess that's all I have for that one.
So the Millview County one on the active application, we're pretty close to taking care of most of the deposit. Do you have any more work with them?
So we have, I need to do a final accounting once I hear back from legal counsel, but we will probably do a meeting follow-up, so we'll have to request some additional deposit before we do that, I think.
Okay, good. Tony?
Yeah, and the mutual water companies, how do you find them? Are they state registered? Is there a list you've been provided, or is it really you have to go and find them?
Some of it's research. Some of them we have identified already just from their dealings with the county. And then others we have to go to the State Water Resources Control Board website. I think they through their drinking water program.
Okay.
Yeah, which used to be with Public Health.
Yeah,
And
right.
the California Division of Drinking Water has just been transferred over to the State Water Resources Control Board, and they should have all those listings because of the testing that needs to be done.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure. We may have some companies that have maybe 5 hookups or, that have fewer hookups than what's required by law for all the testing.
Okay.
Just not.
But we still need to find them just to list them?
I don't think they would qualify as a mutual.
Okay.
At
So
least
that's the
that's
key
my, and I'm just going to give you, for instance, at our ranch, we have 1 well and 2 homes.
Okay, sure.
That supplies both of them, and you may have that on a specific piece of property where it's not only 2 homes, but maybe 3 or
Sure.
farm labor housing,
Okay.
just.
Okay, got it.
But anything over, and I can't remember where the breakoff point is, it would be difficult to go find them.
Yeah, the requirement for them providing profile information is under AB 54. So there is a California Corporations Code that defines mutual water companies. And I'm, off the top of my head, I don't know that breaking point either, but that's what we're going off of.
How are we coming on the fire districts, getting information? I know it's fire season, they're busy, but
We are going to start contacting them again for the third and fourth time. We do have Albion Little River that has provided their information, so we're moving forward on that and hope to have a workshop in November on that one. And then I think we have South Coast. So we're working through it. I think the Piercy, Leggett Valley, and Long Valley ones, we're working through some SOI map things with the 3 of them, so that may take a little bit longer.
Carrie?
Again, and I think we talked about this long ago, but, and maybe Uma, you weren't here at the time, but the fact that if, for instance, you're not hearing back from a fire department, contact with a county supervisor would be, well
Helpful?
taken, very helpful in order to engage.
Thank you.
Okay, any other comments on the future or current applications? All right, we'll move on then to item 8B, correspondence. SDRMA.
That's the only thing that we have for correspondence.
Okay, move on to 8C, Executive Office Report.
I have a few updates. The conference attendees will be Commissioners Ward, Doble, and Gonzalez. And all registrations and reservations have been made. I think 2 of us will be going to the mobile workshop. The voting delegates will be Commissioner Ward with the alternate as Commissioner Doble. I also wanted to note that on January 22nd, there's going to be a Cal LAFCO University course on transparency, where they'll give an in-depth review of recent legislation that's affecting LAFCO and how to comply with those, and also will be a presentation of the Little Hoover Commission recommendations. The Little Hoover Commission recommendations did come out, and I believe were emailed to everyone. I think there were 2 that I wanted to mention. That it was a recommendation that the legislature should consider providing one-time grant funding to incentivize consolidation and dissolution efforts. And that's going to require an initiative from Cal LAFCO, but that's something they're talking about doing. There was another recommendation that all special districts be required to have comprehensive websites. And it was also discussed during the webinar with Cal LAFCO Executive Officer that LAFCO should have a web page on their website that identified all of the special districts and links to their website. So that's something that we can work on as staff. Wanted to note also that there is a call for anyone interested in serving on the Cal LAFCO Legislative Committee. That needs to be, if anyone is interested, it needs to be sent to Pamela at Cal LAFCO by October 5th. So please let us know and we can connect you with Pamela. Great.
No.
Oh, I
No,
thought you were,
I
I
have
had your
comment.
name down.
No way. My plate is too full.
All right, Carrie.
But I
Since
do
you're not
have a
volunteering,
comment.
we'll let you still speak.
I would just like to say our delegates going to the Cal LAFCO annual conference, if the subject comes up about comprehensive websites for all special districts, it appears to me they may not have anyone rules sitting on their legislative committee. To me, we have to advocate. We've got some tiny, how can the cemetery districts, they struggle enough. There's so many of our little tiny districts. So I hope that gets carried on, and when you have the caucus, perhaps this is a point to bring up as well.
Sure.
Because you're going to be voting for someone that is going to be sitting on that board of directors, and maybe some of them involved in the legislative committee. But John Leopold is also someone we can always express that concern to. But if you think it's needed, I can also express that to him, because I'll probably see him the last week in November going into December. I'll be around him. But I think it's important we convey that as rural counties, that some of them are so tiny.
Teresa?
That's exactly what I thought when she said that, and to have some sort of threshold before implementing something like that, whether it's based on revenue or based on, how many people you serve or staff or something, to really, we don't want to burden our small districts with more laws and, when it's hard to even get people to run and sit on the boards for these very small districts. So
Right.
it's a thankless job in many cases.
Carrie?
And if our cemetery districts, I'm going to use them as an example, get together on these audits, it might be that they may want to do one website. And I'm not sure. I think Russian River has a website. I'm not sure about the others. But that might be something where you just can hit Mendocino County cemeteries and be able to find which cemetery is
Good idea.
where, and just a contact number or something.
Consolidated website.
Yeah.
Tony?
Oh, thanks.
I just wanted to put it on the record, the little Hoover Commission report basically states that districts are providing a needed service throughout the state of California, and they need support. I believe that's the key finding of the whole commission's current studies. So,
Is there any feedback with regard to the 3 candidates running for the Northern District for the vote on the 26th? Two of them are from Eureka, or from Humboldt County. One's from, I think the incumbent's from Butte County.
We can send that information out again by email if the commissioners are interested.
Well, I looked at
Yeah,
two
I'd
of
like
them
to
are
see.
Estella from Humboldt County. She's a chair of Cal LAFCO for Humboldt County, but the other guy's been on LAFCO for many, many years too, from
Oh,
Butte
I know
County.
who you mean. I know.
Bill Connolly?
Yeah, Conley.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't know the protocol. I've never voted before in past Cal LAFCOs, but
But I would love to see the information and be able to give input to the chair.
sure. Well, it was sent out yesterday, wasn't it? I received it yesterday.
Oh, okay.
Okay, I'll forward it to the commission.
Tony?
I was just going to say that in general, working legislative, you tend to support someone in your region. That is fairly typical, to at least give some favoritism to someone running out of your region, unless there are other circumstances that lead you to
Supervisor-
believe the other person is a better choice.
They're both supervisors that
Yeah.
I brought up. Carol?
Actually, when you have you get together for your region, and then you will have an opportunity to meet them
Oh, yeah. I know. I
and
just
ask
want to know
them-
if there's any feedback before,
and ask
because we're
them
not going to meet
specific
again.
questions.
Carrie will give me some feedback.
Well, Carrie's been, before I forget, what's the process for replacing Angela?
Uma?
My understanding from looking at the code is that we notify the special district selection committee, and then they will put forward a name. What? There isn't one. We'll have to research that then.
Okay.
And Jerry just shared with me information, and I remember looking at it, but wasn't sure who was all going to be running. But I certainly give a hurrah for Supervisor Estelle Fennell. She's a fantastic person, a great representative, and my personal, if I were the one voting, that's who I would vote for.
Yeah. I liked her too.
Another function that Angela performed very well was reporting on the
On the
water
DPA.
districts joining together. And I think whatever happens in the future, we need to get updates concerning water in
Right.
the water districts.
Good idea. Staying on this subject, Uma, you had mentioned that you were, after the last August meeting, you were going to meet with the Russian River JPA upper. Did you get any good information out of that?
I did meet with Tamara, and she mostly just gave me a kind of a brief history of the water districts in the Ukiah Valley area. She noted that we talked a little bit about that the State Water Board had been interested in us, LAFCO, kind of going parallel processes with their water rights process and permitting. It's probably not going to work out that way. According to Tamara, she felt that there's so many fits and starts that it would be difficult to do, so she would like to get a little further along in that process before bringing it to LAFCO. And so it still looked like probably a couple of years before that would
Oh,
occur.
boy. Okay. All right, anything else with the executive officer report? Tony?
I just think, going back to the question about special district committee, that maybe the Policies and Procedure Committee should look at the process of how we go through in Mendocino County to run elections for the special districts, and at least have a policy that codifies that.
What do you guys think?
Isn't there a state mandate on that?
Yeah, I think it's a state.
Well, we would refer
But-
to that, but we are doing a certain process that doesn't necessarily, we don't have such a committee in the special districts, because you need a majority of the districts to respond and actually participate, which has never happened except once in this county.
How did the process go with you?
It was run through the LAFCO.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think we should at least describe it, make sure it meets state law, and if not, then we'd have to reconsider our process.
Well, we put a lot on the P&P committee. You guys up to another one? Okay.
We're good.
We're good, huh? Yes.
There.
We get a lot done in a short period of time.
You guys are an awesome,
Yeah.
Got a good chair, yeah.
we got an awesome committee. I guess the chair did nominate
Ter-
those three, so I guess I'll take.
Teresa's tough. She gets it done.
All right, we're going to committee reports. We've gone through the Policy and Procedure Committee, but the Executive Committee did meet August 7th. And we did discuss a couple of things. One was using outside consultants on larger applications and a mandatory sexual harassment training to the districts. Maybe a recommendation there. Do you remember those comments or those issues? I'm not sure where we left it, after that meeting, but we did discuss those two items. So I don't know what our budget looks like. Beth?
The training subject, the committee had discussed waiting until January or February after elections to do the training. I have been in touch with the county council's office, a couple of people there, and they too are waiting until then. So Kit Elliott has showed some interest in doing the sexual harassment training in addition to the Ethics and Brown Act training. And I'm in contact with a staff person there to include notification to LAFCO and help communications with the special districts for those trainings.
So up to the first of the year, we'll look at that.
Yeah, and I'm continuing to find alternative ways, but really cost effectiveness would be to wait until the 2018.
Well, I think it's important that, as a LAFCO to help out the districts that can't afford those kind of things. It is sort of requirement now with sexual harassment training.
Every 2 years.
Yes.
Yeah, so
So-
county council is scheduling those. They hadn't scheduled them when I spoke to them last, but those will be scheduled for 2018. And then the idea would be to propose scheduling not the same month, so we spread out in location and time availability of these trainings if we do additional ones. So the ones done by the county are free, and so we wouldn't want to do one the same month or the
No,
same
that's true.
time,
Okay.
So we are proceeding on that.
Do you know what our decision was on the consultants and larger
Do you wanna take that?
applications?
I think what we decided was that it would be as needed and would come under my contract unless there was an EIR involved, and then
Okay.
it would be come to the commission. It's my recollection.
Okay.
I have a
Teresa?
question. On the sexual harassment training, is that mandatory if you have employees or mandatory if you interact with the pub? What's the mandate on that?
I think
Because
it's-
a lot of districts are so tiny and meet twice a year, and
Doesn't matter. Excuse me. May
Go
I
ahead.
speak?
Go ahead. I
It
saw the
doesn't
light.
matter. Anybody that serves in an elected position, even appointed position, but serves on, boards and commissions, you have to have it every 2 years.
I've served for 8 years and never had that.
It's new.
I think it's new.
Okay.
I just
So
think-
is it only sexual harassment, or can it include not being discriminatory against religions and other things like
You
that?
got to go through
or-
the training.
I mean,
I don't know.
is
the
it
answer.
comprehensive or just
I
sexual
don't
harassment?
know.
Yeah, and you can also take it, you can go on computer and do it online as well. But it's Brown Act training, it really isn't called Brown Act training, but it's, the trainings that have been required every 2 years, it's just added to the list.
That'll be another thing that Kevin and Jerry and I
Ethics
can
and, yeah.
find out from Cal
Sexual
LAFCO too. What kind of how's the training affect just sexual harassment or other things?
And when
Report back
was that
in November.
mandated, just so I know? When was that,
We'll find
the
out.
beginning of the year, or?
It's a law, I don't know.
Or
I'm not sure when it went into effect.
just so I
just
can
know-
convey to my fellow board members that we need to do this.
I think if you go online
Yeah,
and just Google it, it'll come up
okay,
and tell you just exactly all the bullet points.
all right.
And the one thing we need to keep in our sights is as of 2020, all districts have to be participating in elections with the gubernatorial and presidential election cycles. So it will simplify the 2-year process because everyone will be in the same 2-year cycle.
You've already effectively done
In brick
that.
trails, but not all districts have.
And let me see if I can get this right. So if you're up for election, I think it's 2020, you have to have a campaign in March. The election is in March now.
Oh, that's right.
So, basically, for a special district as well as maybe city councils, and I know for sure for Board of Supervisors, you're not reelected in that March. You serve as a lame duck
Until December.
until December December
long time.
31st.
That's
Yeah.
a long time.
So I need to research it more, but
You guys
that's the
can
new
really go
law.
after it.
And
And-
it goes in, I think, I don't know, but it's not this cycle, but it's each presidential election.
And I
So it's
think
every 4
anyone,
years.
and I think anyone who has been so elected, even not sworn in until that January,
Exactly.
still has to go through these trainings because they become,
An ex officio,
An ex
an
of-
elected representative.
Crazy.
That's true.
And
Oh,
don't
goodness.
forget 700 as well. Form 700.
Or 700.
And you know that when I saw the note about Angela, I hope we remind her that she has to turn in within 30 days of leaving office for Form 700.
Good idea. Good. All right. Can we move on? We'll move on to 8E, Commission Report, Comments or Questions. Upper Russian River Water Agency, JPA, and this is where we will miss Angela. Do you have any update?
I don't have any updates, and we will figure out how to make those updates for the next meeting. We could possibly ask Tamara from the Russian River Flood Control District, or,
She's the general manager of the DCA.
yeah.
Have you
I'll figure it out.
received comments from the commission on all the JPAs in the county, and do we have a list of that now?
Yes.
We're still working on it. We have,
Accepting.
I don't know that it's comprehensive yet.
What is the requirement for us once we get the list together?
I found a list under the, excuse me, I found a list of the number of JPAs in this county on the website for the state Grand Jury Association, and I sent it on to the office. There was a handful of them, including things that one doesn't think about, like the youth project is a JPA. So that list, but I don't think we had no real reason to pursue anything further.
Well, Kevin and Jerry, I think we could probably find out too what other LAFCOs are doing with their JPAs as well and how they're gonna deal with them. Maybe report back as well.
So what most LAFCOs are doing they have a webpage dedicated to the JPAs, and they just post their formation documents and any amendments there. I think LAFCO's requirements end at just having that information available at
Okay,
this
good.
time.
Commissioners, any report, Kevin?
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to let you know there is a new JPA in Ukiah Valley. It's the City of Ukiah and the Ukiah Valley Fire District have formed a JPA. We've approved a joint operating budget, and we're moving forward together. And we're pretty
Back
excited.
to the future.
And I have
Yeah.
that document.
You said that to me before.
I have that document. It's already been submitted to that.
Great. So I just
Thank
wanted to let everyone know.
That's
Anybody else? I have two comments. One, I signed the GIS contract with the county The date was 9/19 through 6/30/18. So we have an actual contract with GIS. And I received a new rental agreement from the conference center starting January 1 of 18. It's going up $20 a month for our little office. Gary?
And after Kevin making that statement, did the county add Ukiah Valley? I can't remember our timing on turning in a JPA, but the Ukiah Valley Groundwater
on there.
Sustainability. Okay, you've got that on there?
Yeah, I have
Okay.
the JPA document. I've basically started a spreadsheet, and it's something like 9 pages long. Nicole French from the
Okay.
supervisor's office.
I
sent
couldn't
me
remember if I
many
got that
go back
from you.
decades. So there's the comprehensive list, and then there's the LAFCO relevant list, which we will mine out of that.
Okay, but I want you to check
But we
to
definitely
see
have the
the
GSA.
GSA because it's new as of, you know.
Right. Well, I was there. Yeah.
Summertime.
I definitely have those documents.
Okay.
Thank you.
I just couldn't remember if I'd added it.
And that was quite an accomplishment also, I must say.
Two last things. Savings bank signature cards. Did we get everybody signed up on that?
The bank was keeping me up to date, and as far as I'm aware, everyone there was
We
the
were
last time I
waiting-
checked, there was one more
I
person.
think it was John, wasn't it? John, did you sign?
I think you confirmed to me that you did.
Okay.
If you haven't heard from me, it's
And then the signature card for our reserve account with Community First now. Carrie, you were supposed to add your name to that.
I didn't know that.
I don't know about that. What's decided?
Somehow I must have
I think
missed
that
that.
can go to executive, or-
So I need to go down there?
I believe that, yes, it would be the chair and the vice chair.
I've already done it. I just think Carrie needs to give the update. And then I authorized you to access the account but not make any changes.
Correct.
It's the old Mendel Lake building.
The old Mendel Lake.
Correct.
Mhm.
Okay.
And last item is 8F, Cal LAFCO Business and Legislative Report.
Kind of included a brief report on the Lula Hoover Commission with the executive officer's report, but that has been emailed to everyone. And if anyone would like further information, please let me know and I can try to dig around for more.
Okay, and thank you for Carrie, your comments on our standard template and agenda and minutes. That's was really easy to read. And thank
Yes.
you.
Is there any feedback on that while we're at the end?
It was really hard to download and hard to read.
I got some information for you.
Your packet.
It was a change in the PDF file.
I'm having trouble opening it, and so I just wondered, is there an update?
Did anyone else have problems opening it?
Frankly, you know, I prefer
It'll
the
open,
old
but it
one.
won't progress through.
It just doesn't.
We didn't change anything regarding the PDF
It came
process.
looking different,
What we
and
changed was the format of the agenda in a Word document. That was the only thing we changed. So I can look into why the
whole thing
PDF.
came out really strange, difficult to work.
Did anyone else have that?
Now, granted, that we're both using Apple products.
Yeah, that's what I
There was
wonder.
an Apple update, so it could be just related to that.
Yeah. Does anyone else have an Apple that they used?
Oh, you need mine?
I think we may have found your issue.
Oh,
You have an Apple?
So you can get on
Oh,
the account.
it may
Oh,
have been
here.
something with the
Okay.
Apple
First
update, like you
American.
said. We can look into it.
Our first commercial.
Email
Email.
and the website. Yeah.
And
You're handing
It
this
says
to me
can't-
too?
Yeah.
doesn't
Okay,
recognize
I'm
it.
sorry, I signed it.
No, you can have it.
It's too expensive for me.
Yeah, I mean, we can work on it, for sure. Commissioner Brown, did you have any feedback about the agenda format itself? You're happy with the new?
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
No,
thank
it's
you.
really good. Thank you. All right, anything else for the good of the commission? We're done.
Right. Wow, really?
I got you before 11.
We're still on mic.
I did that at my last meeting for Yale Russian River Commission. I'm done.
I'm done.